Okay, welcome back. We're going to start digging in right now, and we'll start out by exploring Hello Android. So Hello Android, this seems like, oh, it's such a simple thing, but there's a whole lot of Android in the very first application that you make, so we have to start looking around. And we need some definitions. So this isn't quite as easy as making a Java program where there's a main method and you start executing from there. The architecture of an Android application is quite a bit different from a plain old Java console application that you might have used in your Java course. So here's the same warning that I gave you before. If you didn't get your machine set up, you have to go and do that. And if it didn't work, start from the beginning and try it again. Of the people who are testing these videos as we go along, it didn't work the first time for anyone. And my response was, well, I don't really know what you did, but go back and try it again. And they said, okay, it works now. So don't be frustrated. You are pioneers in this, and it's not easy. Pioneers have arrows in their back, but they also get the glory, don't they? Well, I watch Western movies. Okay, here's your first concept in an Android application. It's an activity. And your application will have one or more activities. And when you hear the word activity, you think of it as something that the program does, but you don't think of it that way. Think of it as this is an activity that the user does. So if you have a program and the user has to enter their name and address on one screen on the Android device, the activity is the user entering their name and address. And the code that represents the activity, you think of this as one layout or one screen worth of user interaction. And whatever is the user's activity in that interaction is how you should name your activity. So this is not completely true that every application, every Android application has activities. There are some that run in the background as services and so on, but we're not going there right now. We're going to do the simpler ones, which are complicated enough as they are. So the next thing that we would look at is an intent. And you think of this as the verb. And intents in Android are pretty powerful. We're not going to do intents in the first one, but an intent is so important. I want you to think about it more than once. So an intent is something that you want done. And the first thing we will use an intent for is to move from one activity to another. One more. The view. No, it's not those women on television in the morning. It is how the user interface looks. So what the activity, how the activity presents itself, and the layout of the screen, where the buttons go, and so on. So the activity, the intent, and the view. We're going to start with those. And I'm going to go back to Eclipse and build Hello Android, and we will start digging in and making sure that we understand what we have with the very simplest Android application. So not only does it work, but what's going on. So we will, in this segment, we will create a new virtual device. I know you've done that already in the setup, but we're going to just keep making some. And we will look inside the application at the source package, the application's manifest, the main layout, the resources, the gen package, and then we will specifically look at the activity class. And we'll talk about the backstack. Let's go right away to Eclipse. Okay, here we are in Eclipse, and you should have this little button on your toolbar, and this is the Android SDK and the Android Virtual Device Manager. The Android Virtual Device is the what we're calling the emulator, the software that pops up that looks like the phone. And this is also the screen where you manage what's been downloaded. So the installed packages these are the APIs that I have available to me, and I know that there are more, and I'm just not going to update. Well, I'm not sure. 2.3 is on here already. Maybe 3.0 would appear if I did an update, but that's okay. What I want us to do first is to make a new virtual device or a new emulator, and just to make sure that we can always do this. And I give mine some name that I can remember. So I'm going to call this Colin Donut, and that's because I'm going to make this a 1.6 or a level 4 API, and that was the release called Donut. And we don't really have to do anything else. I'm not going to get very specific about how much memory I have and what kind of a screen I have. Well, we can play with this if you want to. We can go to the smaller screen, and I would actually have to look up what is QVGA. But let's create an emulator specifically for this application, and I'm going to call it Donut, and it will be the 1.6 API level 4. And so here it is in my list of possible emulators. When you make an Android application and you have a target audience, you want the audience to be as large as it can be. So you would want to test your application on various emulators and really various physical devices, as many as you have or can borrow. Okay, let's go away here, and I'm going to start right from the beginning. So I'll say File, New, Project. I will pick Android Project, and my project name is going to be, don't put apostrophes in your project name. And we're going to create a new project in the workspace. We're going to use 1.6, which is API level 4. So while I'm thinking about all of those things, I'm going to go down here and say I'm going to use API level 4, the SDK version 4, the application name. This is a Java identifier, so it can't have any spaces in it. Oh, this is kind of the hello application. Okay, the package name, and this is important. I don't want you to be starting off with a bad practice here. So we're going to specify a unique path to our application. So eventually when we deploy our application, we can't have any name conflicts. So if someone else made a Hello Donut class and they didn't put it in a package that's specific to their organization, we could have a a name conflict. So the package, the convention is you use the URL of your company. So if we were valenciaprogrammers.com, if that's our website, I'm going to use it backwards, com.valenciaprogrammers. And that's going to be our highest level folder, and then I will make a package specific for this application. Usually I would not put the word package in a package name, and I'm doing that now only so that we specifically won't get mixed up about what is what. So we're going to create an activity. That means that this wizard will generate a class for us, and it's just easier. I want that class to be called Hello Donut Activity. And the same thing is true. I would not put the word activity in the name of an activity class, except in this case we're going to keep everything so that we understand where it's going. Okay, we can just do finish here. Well, what's next in the wizard? This is for making test projects, and we're not going to do that. So from this part of the wizard we can just say finish and let it build our Hello Donut application. Okay, that was quite fast. Sometimes you'll see red X's on here that it didn't compile, and you panic a little bit and then realize that, okay, it was just catching up. Okay, let's start exploring in here. The first thing that we have at the top is the source package, and inside of the source package we have the Hello Donut package. This looks like one folder, but it isn't. If you look out in your workspace, you'll have a COM folder. Inside that folder, a Valencia Programmers folder, and inside of that folder, a Hello Donut package folder. Inside there is the Java program. So that looks pretty awkward, but it isn't. That's how we do it. So here is the activity class that was generated for us. This is sort of like the main method. And an activity is one screen's worth of stuff. So there's the class that is in the Android packages, the activity class, which we inherit from. So inside that activity class there is a method called onCreate. And there's a whole bunch of methods called onSomething. And this controls the activity life cycle. So on this event do this, on this event do this. And the first one is when this object is created, then execute this code. So we have this very small amount of code so far, and we don't really know what it does. We'll figure it out. Okay, let's look more into this package, and I want to show you the Android manifest file. This is an XML file, and every Android application has a manifest. If you think about what the word manifest means in English, it's a document that says what everything is in this box. So if you get a package from overseas, there will be a manifest with it. So the manifest is describing everything that's in this application, and that's absolutely required of all Android applications. Now, there are these wizards That's not really a wizard, it's a user interface that allows you to change the XML file. And the wizards, it's okay for starting out using the wizards, but eventually you're going to have to understand the XML. That's not too bad. You don't get to make stuff up in the XML manifest. You can only specify a small number of things. So for now, if you need to, we can add stuff using these. Wizards, and we can look at how it changes the XML file. That's kind of a reasonable way of learning this. So we're not going to do too much in here. Today we're not going to do anything in here. But we're just exploring all of the parts that have to be there. Okay, so we have this activity, and we have to specify when you launch an application what activity is going to run first. And this is where it's specified in the manifest that the hello donut activity is going to be the one that is launched. So here's the XML that describes the hello donut activity, and as we add more activities in the next video, there will be a manifest entry for each of the activities. So this activity excuse me, the hello donut activity is going to be the one that runs when we launch the application. Okay, what else do we need to see in here? When we built this project, we said we would use the 1.6, the level 4 SDK, which is Android 1.6, and that put into our project the Android 1.6 jar of classes. So if you explore in here, these are the classes that we have accessible to us. The source code is not loaded in here, only the class files. So there is an R class, that's a great name, isn't it? And there's the manifest class, and if you flip through these as a Java programmer, you'll kind of say, okay, those are the Android ones, this is not familiar to regular Java, but then these ones are. So the fonts and the I/O package, the math package, that's some I/O stuff. There's some SQL stuff. So all of the regular Java classes that are available to you are loaded in here, and these are the Android jar for SDK level 4. Did you see that? There it is. SDK level 4, which is version 1.6. Okay, now we're going to look under the res folder. And I'm going to open up a couple of these. So res is the resources for your application. And assets is related. So if you have a whole bunch of pictures and sound files and so on, these might be assets of your application, and you just drop them in there as an organizational tool. There's nothing in there now. Under resources, they generated all of this for us. So just by saying we want an activity associated with this application, we got a layout. So if we open up this, it's also an XML file. Here is the layout for our application. So here are some widgets. So this is a GUI builder, and here are some widgets that we could use to build the activities layout. and it will generate this XML file. So people are generally complaining about using this drag and drop thing. So I know you are all excited that, oh, I could just drag these checkboxes and buttons into my application. And you can, and it will generate the XML, or it will try to generate the XML. And when it gets too complicated or you do something that it doesn't understand, then that conversion of your GUI drag and drop thing into the XML will start not working right. So we have to be a little bit careful about changing this layout. And we will have later on a very specific exploration of building the GUIs for your Android application. So we're beginning at the beginning just to know what's in here. So we have one layout, one XML file, and then under values in the resources we have a file called strings XML. We have the same thing. We have this wizard GUI place where you can change the XML file, and then you could actually go and change the XML file by hand, which is kind of preferred, but I don't want you to get in a big mess and be frustrated. There's even a spell checker in here, so if I put hello colon and hello donut activity, it will say that this word is spelled incorrectly. Isn't that fun? Okay. The gen folder. So we have a COM Valencia Programmers Hello Donut package, the exact same package that's used up here in the source folder. And the difference is you don't change what's in here. So we have a class called R, which was generated for us from the things that we did down here in resources. So we're going to write Java programs using these resources. That means it has to somehow turn into Java code, and that's done automatically. So let's look in the R class, and you're not allowed to change this. There's all sorts of warnings. I don't know what kind of error messages you would get if you start doing that. But the class R has some inner classes, and they are public static finals. That means that we'll be able to see them by saying r.layout.main and r.string lowercase s man. So inside of this public final class we have public static final classes. So if it's accessible, it's public. If it's static, it's accessible from the name of the class. So r.layout is this class, and it has in it something called main. So r.layout.main is the name of the layout, and internally, this is a little bit disturbing to people, because internally we have these magic reference numbers, and that resource is 7F0300 whatever, and it will go and dig out what it needs to build that layout. And I'm just noticing that after I changed this strings XML file, I didn't save it. This is one of the really convenient things about using the Eclipse environment for doing this work. If I save strings.h, if there was a mistake, automatically it would show me that with those little red X's what was going wrong in the project based on each mistake. So save everything as soon as you do it, so that you will see what the mistakes are as soon as possible. There will be mistakes, don't worry. Okay, what I want to do now is to run this application. My favorite way of doing this is to go to the application and right-click on it and say run as, we're going to pick Android application. Watch the console, because this takes an incredibly long time. But watch the console and think about what's going on. If something goes wrong, you'll see it in the console. Oh, I think we have this funny small screen virtual device, and the dogs agree. So it does take a long time to run these emulators, but you have to think about that the entire Linux operating system is being loaded in here, and all of the applications that are standard on this emulator are being loaded in here. And now look what's going on. We're installing Donut APK, and the APK is the Android package, and now we're starting the activity. And the activity manager, which is the way that the life cycle of the Android applications is controlled, the activity manager will be the one that's deciding what is here in the Android device screen. And there will be only one activity at a time. Well, that's not quite true. We could pop up another activity on top of this, like a pop-up dialog and so on. So we have this working, and if you're comfortable, if you've played with an Android device, you might know that there is always this back button. And the back button means go to the previous activity. So if we click the back button, we're going out here, and that doesn't mean that our application is no longer running. It means that our activity is not the current one. So the activity back button takes you down the activity back stack. Now how can we find our activity? Look at all of the applications that are loaded on this thing. Is this us? Yes. Okay. So the screen wasn't quite big enough to see that that was our activity, but so here's the back button, and our activity or our application is still installed and it's still running with this little default icon. Well, maybe I can pull this. Okay. There we are. Hello, Donut. And back. Okay, small steps. We created this emulator, a Donut version emulator, SDK level 4, and Android 1.6. And we made an application that runs on this emulator, and we can see as it loads, and we're starting to understand what's going on inside of the Android device. The life cycle, the life cycle of the applications. One of the things that some people don't like about Android is that the applications stay there all the time. You could explicitly write code that destroys your application and takes it out of memory, but most people don't. They allow the Android, the operating system, the activity manager, to go and get rid of stuff when it needs the space. That's a little bit dangerous, isn't it? So if you write an application and your application is happily running, someone might come along and destroy it. The activity manager may do that. That's different from what you expect on most traditional computing platforms. Okay, well, I feel like we have achieved a lot, and let's do one more thing so that you'll feel happy about what we've achieved. I'm going to go back into the main layout, and this is the XML version, and we're going to get good at making user interfaces. Let's put something in our application that will make it look more impressive. Let's put a date picker. I just dragged that date picker over there, and oh, let's put a button. Not a nice layout, they're all jammed together. Go back to the main XML and see that it did a very bad job of formatting this XML. So it generated one XML line of code, one line of XML. So machine generated code is not, it just doesn't come out the way that you can maintain it, and people fight over whether, well, we should have written it ourselves and all of that. But anyway, so now if we save this, don't forget to save, we have an application with a layout that has some more interesting stuff in it. So let's go back, and when we saved it, we got no red X's anywhere, and we are going to run it again just to see that we can do stuff to our Android application that almost starts to be interesting. Okay, so watch in the console. It takes so long, you have to do something, or else you'll sit there and worry that it's not working. So in the console, if you see that your the activity manager has started your activity, here it is, hello donut activity. Well, okay, it just took that long to bring the emulator back to the front. And the screen is locked. Press menu to unlock. Okay, so we're going over here, we're going to press the menu, and here is our donut activity, and I can tell you that I'm recording this on February 25th, 2011. And I think it's 9:59. Yeah, that's pretty good. Oh, we have a button with false marked on it. So there's a button that we can click on, but it does nothing. And the date picker is actually functional, but nobody is listening to the date, of course. Oh, I was typing on my keyboard. So this is the user, this this is the interface for interacting with the Android emulator. And we've got another one down here. Yeah, these are the soft keys and these are the hard keys. So if your Android device has an actual physical keyboard on it, you could use this one. And if it doesn't, you have one of these soft keys pop up that use the touch screen. And it won't let me pick May 66. May 61? No, it's May 6, 1984. Okay, so what did we do? We have an application that we can load on the virtual device, which we also created. And we now know that we can start to do stuff with the layout. And hopefully we're starting to get comfortable with the structure of the Android application. As we learn how to build the Android applications, there is a whole bunch of things coming from all different directions, and I work with a woman in volunteer work, and we always get in a great huge mess, and she always says, well, how do you eat a frog? And she smiles and says, one bite at a time, and it seems to help. So we're going to take small steps and see if we can stay on solid ground for as long as we can. So in this video we talked about the Android virtual devices, and we made one for a specific version of Android. We built another simple Hello Android, and we talked about the importance of naming your package. And the naming convention is that in your folder names or your package names you don't use any capital letters or underscores. I don't like that too much, but I'll go along with what people say, that this is how we're going to do it. So the Android classes, and we didn't look at the Java doc for the Android classes, but they are there. I'm going to introduce those a little bit kind of one by one as we need them. I don't want to blast you with 4,000 pages of documentation that doesn't get us anywhere. So we looked at the Android manifest file. This exact file, Android manifest.xml, will be in every Android application, and it will specify in there what's in the application. Most notably, it will specify every activity that's in the application. And we had only one activity, and it was the one that is presented when the application launches. So we have the concept of the activity stack, or the so-called back stack. Use the back button on the Android device to go back. So your application might have lots of activities, and you can use the back button to go down the back stack. Or your application might have only one activity, one screen's worth of something for the user to do. And in that case, if someone hits the back button, they would switch to the activity that was most recently active before your activity. Okay, and when we run our Android application, what is going on to the device or onto the emulator is an APK file. And this is an Android package file. And it's really just a jar file that has the Android manifest in it. That's the file that gets deployed to the device. Okay, so this is a good start. We're actually doing stuff with an Android application, and we're starting to understand what we might want to do. Hopefully you're also thinking about your great Android application as we go along. It's a good motivator. I'll see you in the next segment.